Retro RPG Roundtable. I am Megan Lemmert, also known as Nox Frederica, lead developer of Nox Arcast and co-founder of 6502 Workshop. And we have with us today a number of other developers, some regulars, and a guest developer. We have Adam Haas, the developer of Realms of Antiquity for the TI-99. Nox Arcast is an Apple II game. Meant to mention that before for my project. And we have Jeff from Distance Systems. And what's the name of your game, Jeff?
Mythfarer.
Awesome. And we have Adam, also known as Golden Flame, who's working on
of Chronicles of Eleusis, but this individual game's subtitle is The Dark Unknown still.
Awesome. I remembered it was a cool one. I love Chronicles of Eleusis. Reminds me of the Dragonlance Chronicles. That always sticks in my head. So it's in good company with the name
Yes.
Chronicles for sure. And as a guest developer to the roundtable, we also have Greg Jewett with us from the 8-Bit Shack, which they have released a number of different games for the Apple II, same platform as iCode and they're currently working on releasing a game that is, I think, a bit more RPG in nature than the others, but Greg will tell us a little bit more about that, called Skull Island, and they're getting ready to do a Kickstarter and produce a box set with the Feelies and all of that's fun stuff. So as a way to get started here, Greg, could you tell us more about 8-Bit Shack and your games and Skull Island and your Kickstarter?
Sure. So again, Greg Jewett. So 8-Bit Shack has actually been around longer than I've been part of the project. It was a two-person team at one point. It was Dan Henderson and Mark Gollenbeck at the time. And even prior then, it was Mark. So it's grown to 4 people. And the software company has put out numerous utilities and games for the Apple II platform. Everything from our Undead platform, our brand new Skull Island, a hardware detection tool called Identify 2. There's been Angry Birds, the old game was recreated for the Apple II platform. And numerous others. Dan Henderson is the creative mastermind behind all the various games he has put out there. Most of the games are free. You can download them directly from the website. And some of our more popular titles, obviously, still have a cost to them to obtain them, either as a download or physical media. We still provide that. So I joined the team last year during their release of Undead, which is a puzzle escape game. Basically, you enter a realm of despair, I guess, and you work your way through that. There are 4 distinct levels. The 4th being the absolutely ridiculously hard one for you to get through. There's a gremlin involved who comes and drags you to different parts of the maze, and you don't know where you are and such. And basically, the concept of the game is to get through and win and escape the castle, or escape the Duke who's imprisoned you there. So basically what happened with that one was I fell in love with the game, solving it. And I started reaching out to the developers and I go, has anybody ever mapped this thing? Because it was horribly hard to get through without mapping it. And they go, nope. So I took it upon myself to map the entire game and put it out online. It's still out there. And so people who are playing the game, they go, I'm stuck. I need to get through. How do I do so? They can visit this and they can get a clue or two, because at first I just put all the information out there, and then Dan got a hold of it and he goes, that just gives away everything. Keys to the castle and everything. So I broke it up into hint sections so they can do that. So that was my contribution to the platform, or into the company at the time. And then they brought me on right away for their next project, which is I'll talk about now, which is Skull Island. Skull Island is, if anybody's familiar with Taipei and similar games like that for the IBM and platforms and such, basically you sail around islands, collecting and trading to accumulate a gold reservoir. And while you're sailing, you could run into friendly ships or pirates, at which point you would have to battle them, or try to bribe them, or try to run away. If you had a good enough ship, well-equipped ship, you could escape them. Of course, if you had enough gold, you can just pay them off and say, "Hey, get out of my way. I'm going to the next
Oh
island."
man, I'm having flashbacks. Hooligans, pirates, Taipan.
Exactly, exactly. And of course, there really isn't a total goal to the game, other than to be the richest sailor captain in the game for yourself, wherever you want to be. However, we've built into this version of the game a winnable scenario, because everybody knows that on the 8-bit platforms, there is, when you're using integers and such, you have to account for that. And if you accumulate more than 16.7 million gold, you're a winner, because if I try to go over that, it will reset to 0. You don't want that to happen to anybody. That would be disastrous. You worked that hard to get that much gold. So we basically put a tilt mechanism in the game and says, oh, if you reach this point, congratulations. You worked really hard. And we've installed that feature into the manual, and people will know about it when they play the game. And if they do win the game, they get to take a pick from any of the software titles that we have available on our website, and or possibly merchandise that we might have available at some point. Not yet, we're thinking about it, but if that comes around, we'll make that available to people. But yeah, that's Skull Island. It was the game concept and everything was designed by Dan Henderson, and he put together his creativity to ensure that there are like 48 different islands and characters you will meet throughout the game. It's all using double high-res graphics within the Apple II to generate these screens, the pirate fight scene, island interaction scenes, and so forth. And there are many various caveats and ways of playing the game. I mean, you could be out there just to fight the pirates. How many pirates can you defeat? Or how much cocaine can I buy up and sell and make the most money and such? So everyone can make their own version of the game, however they want to play it. But yeah, it's a very kind of open-ended game for people to enjoy.
Well, that sounds really awesome, Greg. Thanks for sharing that. I particularly think it's cool that you decided to take like a deep dive into the pirate dynamic of adventure and role playing. That's always something I thought would be really interesting. But when I was making my game, given it was much more broad in focus, I did put pirates in it, but it was definitely much more limited. And what you've described sounds like some really interesting game mechanics around it. That's really awesome. And tell us about the Kickstarter, if you don't mind. We'd love to hear about how to support your project.
Yeah, so Kickstarter's not out yet. Probably right after Jonathan and myself get back from the Vintage Computer Festival Midwest, where we're going to be promoting the game heavily there. But basically, the Kickstarter is being put together. We'll have 4 different reward levels that you'll be able to partake in. The first, obviously, being a download only. A second being download with physical media shipped to you, and then 2 box set pieces. One will be a standard box set, which will have a copy of the game, paper manual, paper map, a 3D figurine of Skull Island's most notorious pirate, a USB drive. Trying to think what else we're throwing in there. And a deck of cards. We call them trading cards, but it's a deck of cards that we put together, of which you have all the various characters you will meet throughout the game, what island they live on, where their hometown is, their role at what point they were on the ship, Captain Dread's ship and such. So yeah, you have that. It's a fantastic looking set. It's in a crystal clear case with 48 cards within. That'll be included in that box set. And then we'll have the premium box set. And this is where I'm going to ask all of you for help on this one, and you understand why in a minute here, but basically the premium box set we're including the ability to win a Platinum 2E computer, fully decked out. RAM, it's been retrobrided. It'll have an X drive in it. We'll have a what do they call that? It's the music box.
Mockingbird?
I'm sorry.
The Mockingbird?
Yes, thank you. Mockingbird capabilities. You think I'd use that platform long enough I could remember that, but a moment's notice I forget. But yeah, so that computer will be available. It'll come with monitor, computer, everything. It's a winnable item that you will be able to do so. Now, here's the question to you all: is how we can do this. You know, we originally thought raffle. Let's raffle this thing off to all the people who buy box sets, the premium box sets. Then we found out from Kickstarter you're not allowed to do that. It's like so there's several options. We thought maybe, oh well, why don't we make it available to all contestant or supporters, backers, pledgers of Kickstarter, and just put their name in a hat, or up the ante a little bit and make it so that anybody who reaches 1 million gold gets an entry. So available to all out there. If you play the game and make it up to 1 million gold, then you get an entry automatically in. We'd make it like a contestant entry form on the website where you can enter it and try to win and such. So yeah, we're still trying to figure that out, if you've all done Kickstarters or not, how you guys have approached that type of incentive, because we're still struggling with that one.
So what it sounds like you've done some specific research on this. What is exactly if you know the Kickstarter rules saying there's something that you can't do relating to raffling? It would help
Correct.
to know that in order to make suggestions.
So Kickstarter has basically a base rule in there that says you can't put anything chance into the Kickstarter. And if you do make it a chance item, then it must be available to all supporters of the project. There can't be, for example, like where we originally were thinking, oh, let's just make it available, as a lotto out of the people who support it at the premium level, premium box level. But more than we read into the small print, couldn't do that. So that's why I came up with all those various other ideas I've already kind of let you all in on that we were thinking about. Just different ways of how could we do this and get this to be approved by the Kickstarter people, the folks.
By basing it up, the idea of basing it potentially on like the amount of gold acquired in the game, is it your understanding that that would be okay with the Kickstarter rules because it basically has nothing to do with the Kickstarter specifically? It's just based on gameplay.
That's correct. So yeah, that's the only two options we came up with, which was one available to anybody who buys, including from the download version all the way up to the premium box version, which we basically get rid of. Because that's the only difference between the box set and the premium box set was our attempt to make available this winnable computer. But
yeah, option 2 sounds the better one. And then what you could do is put a time, like 3 months after release is when we'll do the raffle. That way everybody's got time to do this. Biggest thing is how you're going to validate. I mean, I guess like how can you prove that you got 1 million gold in the game? I mean, you could probably code some stuff in. There's always a risk of a hacker, but it's only a chance to win the computer. It's not an automatic win.
Correct. Not sure why a hacker would want to do that, but and would only be one entry per person. They would have to do a lot of work on their end if they really, really wanted it that bad. I mean, they're not that hard to find out there, except for this one has been fully restored, and it's a beautiful machine.
YouTube already has a Platinum 2E, so you don't have to worry. It'll be fine.
But yeah, so I appreciate the input. But basically, yeah, we are looking into that. The way we would prove it, to answer your question, is in the game. Obviously, I think there are 2 different areas where you can inspect the amount of gold that you have. Obviously, it's important component of the game, so you have to be able to check how much gold you have, so that you know how much you're carrying on board, how much you can use during the trade, how much you can use if you have enough to go upgrade the ship class, or trade for various items and such. So you have to know that. And of course, you can do a screenshot from the Apple II platform with your phone or using the various tools that are available if you're in an emulator to take a screenshot. And you would submit that with the entry.
Yeah, I think that that's a really good idea as well. I mean, first of all, the idea of having it just be a chance to win for all Kickstarter backers. I mean, yeah, if it was just limited to the top tiers, I mean that certainly would be a compelling way to do it as well. But I mean, just making it available to everybody, it's more people are going to back the Kickstarter, and there's a lot more people that have a small amount of money than a large amount of money. So that could really be a draw for the lower end of it, which can add up. And then layering on. So I guess fundamentally that seems to me like it could be a good approach, but then layering onto it your idea of attaching it to the game store or game score, I think that's great too, because then it's getting people more excited about some of the gameplay, and getting in there and playing the game and all of that dynamic to it, and it's not just an automatic. Then I think that's really great. And like Adam suggested, giving some kind of a period of time, set a time period, and so people have time to achieve this and all that. That makes sense to me.
Okay, I appreciate the input. I really do. Like I said, we were struggling with that concept on how to pull that off with Kickstarter, and I think we may have found our solution.
Yeah.
Getting your guys' stamp of approval on that, so I like that. So I appreciate that. Yeah, we were struggling with that. It was like, how would we pull that off? So I think that works out really well.
You've probably already done this, but while you were talking, I spent a little bit of time poking at the main game crowdfunding alternatives to Kickstarter to see if I could find
Okay.
any that don't ban raffles, and I could not.
Okay.
So, like, that seemed like a thing to look into if, because Kickstarter is not the end all and be all, even if it is the, 500-pound gorilla on the block. But
Yeah.
it
I-
turns
I
out
have-
nobody wants you to put randomness into the reward system.
Yeah, and I'll admit I never did look into the others because that was what the team wanted to utilize. So I was kind of
Fair enough.
down that path. So yeah.
I suspect it kind of runs afoul of gambling regulations. That might be why they're banning it, or at least it gets close enough to that topic of law. They just don't want to go anywhere near it. That would
Yeah.
be my guess.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Probably right.
And I mean, heck, Kickstarter is so messy. I didn't even do the Kickstarter myself. I had my friend in Oregon do it because he already had an established business, so he could set it up easily. Whereas I would have to have applied for a business license in Washington State to even have a Kickstarter.
Wow. I've never had that limitation. At least the reading that I've done into Kickstarter never required a business license.
Oh, yeah, it's not Kickstarter. It's Washington State.
State specific for some of it, but yeah.
Okay. I'm glad. I guess then I'm glad I live in Texas that it doesn't have that problem.
Yeah.
Here's a thought.
Sure.
One thing you could do. This kind of messes with the aesthetic of the game a bit. But if you had the ability to find or buy or steal or something pieces of an Apple II on various islands, like the keyboard here, the monitor there, and you eventually, as part of the game, assemble an Apple II that you can have in your captain's quarters. And in the game, you'd be able to play Pong on it or something stupid. But
the last
only
piece of the
people-
Apple II costs the 1.6 million gold or
or
whatever.
whatever it costs, yeah. But only people who have assembled a full Apple II would be eligible for the.
I like that.
I
That-
like that a lot.
That's beautiful.
And these suggestions, they always come in when the game is like 95% done, and
Exactly.
you're trying to, close that gap to release. And it's like, well, it would be great if we just okay, rewrite all the code and add that in, right?
Yep. I mean, just this morning I got the beta 5 release from the developer who solved a significant bug that one of our testers found. So yeah, we're literally at code freeze level. So while I appreciate that, Jeff, that was a fantastic idea. I wish I could have incorporated that. I wish I would talked to you ahead of time. That would have been really cool. But unfortunately, yeah, no, we're so close to releasing this thing that my developer actually berated me for even suggesting, but he actually did finally implement it, which was the winnable scenario I referred to at the very beginning of the call, which was if you reach that 16.7 million gold. He wasn't even happy that I found that bug. And he goes, I don't think anybody's ever going to reach that. And I go, you'd be surprised. There's some dedicated gamers out there that will absolutely reach that point. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you have a good, healthy feedback loop going there, and that's great. You know, every project needs somebody being persistent about like, no, really, this is a really good idea, even if it takes, you know, the stretch, as well as coming at it from a player point of view of like what's important and what's not. So sounds like you've got some really great teamwork going on there.
Yeah. I would say one of the reasons I joined the team was the great people that were working on various projects, including the one that I joined them, helping them out on. Great set of folks that I'm working with. So I've enjoyed working with them on this project. Been a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Do you think you'll ever write a CRPG?
You'll have to help me on there. I am not much of a gamer myself.
Computer role-playing game.
And when people refer to RPGs or role playing, now I understand that acronym well. And role playing meaning that you basically take turns, I assume, or
It's based on, of course, you know, Dungeons and Dragons, the
Okay.
quintessential tabletop game. The idea with a CRPG is that it's attempting to mimic a Dungeons and Dragons game. Some have single characters, like Adam's game will. Others have parties, like myself and Megan's Nox Arceus and Realms Untaken. You could have a party, and you control all the characters in the party, and you're like in a fantasy world. Usually it's like a top-down view, but there's isometric and 3D now. You know, Baldur's Gate 3 is probably the most modern, you know, big CRPG of note. But Skyrim is considered a CRPG. Let's see what else popular wise.
is
Anyway,
one of those Marvel games I've seen my kids play. Is that one where they fight as various characters?
that's more actiony, but the principles of a computer role playing game is that you have limited resources. Your characters have to get like weapons and armor, and they get more powerful. They level up as they go along, so they get more powerful and they can take on, you know, greater threats and challenges. Because of course it's based on tabletop games, dungeons, underground dwellings, both mazes, caves, temples, you know, mausoleums, you know, graves, you know, all of that, you know, contributes to the feel of the game. Probably the most classic CRPG that all of us are familiar with is Ultima, which was created by Richard Garriott in 1981, and he went on to do like 8 sequels and through the 80s and 90s. Some of the latter ones were not as great as the early ones, but Ultimas 1 through 5 were all written on the Apple II, and Megan can tell you all about those. You want to take a hand at that?
Well, yeah, I mean, Ultima was, you know, that was like the first role-playing game that I ever played, jumping in at like Ultima 3. Eventually circled back to the earlier ones, and Ultima 5 was the quintessential role-playing game for the Apple II computer. And when developing Nox Arceus, to me, that was the benchmark. It was, you know, whatever Ultima 5 had accomplished, I wanted to see, was it possible to accomplish that from a gameplay technology standpoint, and then push the envelope a bit further to see, well, what might have happened if, you know, Ultima 6 had been on the Apple II instead of on the IBM PC. That's where it jumped platforms and things like that. Yeah, Ultima 5 was characterized by a really large open world that you would explore around, you know, going across the plains and the mountains and crossing rivers, sailing on ships on the ocean, even encountering pirates from time to time, but not nearly with the gameplay mechanics that you're talking about in Skull Island, where pirates are the focus. You would enter towns and castles and talk to the townsfolk or talk to the guards and get clues in their dialogue in talking to them that might lead you to, oh, trekking out this dungeon that was nearby to you know, find the stone of Puzwam or some other, you know, thing. And it was a really incredible experience exploring those games and just the vastness, the richness, and the very it took like the notion of a choose your own adventure book and put it on the steroids of computing. It was just a very very much choose your own adventure kind of all the way through it. And you know, that was the gameplay genre that really spoke to me, which is what led to that being, you know, the genre that I targeted for Nox Chaos. Now, all that being said, CRPG, there's actually like, you know, wars that go on the internet in forums about what's the definition of CRPG. Go over to, you know, the RPG Codex and, well, actually, you maybe don't want to
Maybe
do that. But it gets a little bit intense over there. But or do it if that's your thing. But yeah, I mean, some people it's computer role playing game. Some people it stands for classic role playing game. Classic is in like 80s and 90s, or some say nope, it's only the 80s. And then, well, what defines a role playing game? The most common definition is the one I think Adam was describing, which is largely kind of a Dungeons and Dragons environment modeled into a computer game, you know, scenario. Though, you know, from others' perspectives, it's really more focused on, well, role playing. What does that mean? It means that you are yourself putting yourselves into the shoes of a character in a game and making decisions as though you're that character. That's probably the most broad definition. And in that sense, you know, Skull Island sounds to me like an RPG because you're in the role of the ship captain and you know, commanding the ship and navigating through the different aspects of the world and things like that. So
yeah, so Skull Island definitely has an RPG type feel to it. But I would say if you mixed at least 3 of the games that we have available, Witch Trial, Undead, and Skull Island, if you were to mix those together, you would have probably a more true version of an RPG. You know, wandering around a castle and such, finding yourself in a dungeon, things like that, or sailing a ship and such. So yeah, to answer your question, if we'll ever generate a CRPG, that's going to have to be up to the creative minds of Dan Henderson and Mark. There are the creative minds of the company. My creativeness comes into the artwork, the manual design, map design, technical writing, such like that. That's in running a website. That's all where I come from. I'm actually a full-time job developer, programmer for the University of Texas, where I reside. But to one point, someone mentioned Richard Garriott. Here's a fun tip. I actually met Richard and had several of his collector's items when he went to the International Space Station and resided up there for, I think it was 1 day. And he came back to Earth. And he is actually an avid geocacher, same as myself. Yep. And he has located here in Austin, Texas, on his property here, one of the largest and most intricate geocaches that you have to run around the city finding clues and such, much like an RPG that you're playing the game of geocaching, and you end up on his property entering a combination code into this tower that he constructed on his property that you go inside, and it has a spiral staircase, the whole works. I mean, it's just phenomenal.
I have also done this thing.
Oh, okay, fantastic. So you've done the
guided also by Richard to skip ahead through the parts to run around Austin.
Yep.
But I have been to the tower and inserted the penny and did the whole thing.
Yeah, isn't that very cool? Yeah, very, very cool.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
And then someone here mentioned Dungeons and Dragons. Boy, that brings back memories. When I was younger, teenager time frame, I remember playing Dungeons and Dragons, and one of my friends actually pulled out a version of the game based on The Wizard of Oz. And we all had so much fun in that, where you basically had to explore the Yellow Brick Road and the various aspects of the story till you found Oz and such, and you had to get him to underneath the curtain and such. So yeah, we had fun with that one, along with the various dungeons and everything that we explored. But yes, so while I'm not much of a computer gamer, I do play a lot of that in physical form with my friends and such. So
It's my brother's primary hobby. Like we play every week virtually because he lives 100 miles away from me. But although we're playing Castles and Crusades, which is a different, it's like a Dungeons and Dragons inspired by the old version, but it uses modern mechanics, so it's a lot smoother. So, and yeah, no, that's cool to hear about Richard. I know there's a rumor floating around that he technically still owns part of the Ultima rights from EA. They can't produce anything without his permission. And there's a rumor he's trying to get Larian Studios, the creators of Baldur's Gate 3, to resurrect Ultima. But I think this is all very much a smokes. I don't know if this is true or not. It sounds like fan hopefulness in action because Ultima's been gone for so long, and every time EA's tried to do something, it's failed miserably. So I think the only Ultima still going is the online version, the Ultima Online, massive multiplayer online game. So we'll see.
Absolutely. And of course, you've got Megan's Nox Archaeist, which, you know, I've got a friend's copy, but I'm going to buy my own box copy here soon just because I've heard the box copy is phenomenal. So with all the goodies you get inside of it. So my $120 is coming soon to obtain that.
Well, thank you for your support. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, we have a couple questions about CRPGs we want to serve to the group here. So I'll just throw it out. Now, one of the most common mechanics of CRPGs is food. So it's gone through a lot of iterations through games over the various years. So the question is food. What's it good for? And what is fun about a food mechanic in the game? And I'll start with Jeff. And each time you guys just pass on randomly to someone else after you're done.
All right, then. So what's fun about food? I'm not really sure. I haven't figured out what's fun about food. So my own mechanic is fairly simple. If you have food, you get to regenerate health and stamina. And you do regenerate health and stamina just more slowly without food. I think it has potential to be used as a trick of verisimilitude. Like you can use food as a literal flavoring agent. There's a particular kind of cake that only comes from one corner of your world or something like that. And in fact, in my game, I have sort of a mini game hidden, which is sweet rolls. There are 14 discoverable sweet rolls, and each one is a little tiny puzzle. Like there's one that's trapped in ice on its little paper cup, which you get it from the baker. And if you pour salt on the ice melts and it'll float to you, and you can eat the sweet roll. And of course, if you eat all 14 sweet rolls, and you've got enough of the poison in you that you get magically teleported to the person who placed all those sweet rolls, and there's a small quest to go with that.
And this is all on the TI?
No, mine's on the Tandy Color Computer 3.
Oh, okay.
That machine right there.
All right.
But it's a similar machine to the TI. It's 8 16-bit CPU, 512K of RAM, that kind of thing.
Do they have a decent
Pardon me?
Go ahead, Jeff.
I heard a question.
Right.
Sorry. Is there a decent emulator for the Radio Tandy?
Several.
Okay. I'll talk to you later about that because I would love to check out your game, but I do not own that hardware.
Yeah. So I have yet to release even an alpha yet. So I'm getting close to the alpha, but
I should add, Jeff wrote a CRPG on the Color Computer 3 back in the late 80s called The Seventh Link, which he would probably prefer you not play because it's an Ultima 3/4 inspired game. But
say it, clone. It wasn't like clone. Yes, it's a ripoff.
Yeah.
Not a bad one.
I didn't want to say that, but but the big thing was me and him actually, after all these years, we extracted all the map data for the dungeons and things because it had been lost for years. And we discovered he was really sadistic with his dungeon designs. That if a player won this game back in the day, and I've heard one or two Coco guys claim that they won it, but I've never had proof of it. So
I've never won it myself.
Yeah. So his new project is essentially to, atone for the past. So
Yes. So I think that may be all I have to say on the subject of food.
Okay.
I'll toss it to Chronicles of Eleusis, Adam.
Thank you. So I what's fun about food, and that's broad because food has been done so many different ways. I would say that like Ultima 1 style, you immediately die as soon as you run out of food, that there is nothing fun about that version. Um, but like what you can do for it, for one thing, it's a money sink. Sometimes a game could use those. Um, it forces a certain amount of planning. You don't want to go out into a dungeon and get halfway through and discover that you're running out of food. Whether that's good or not depends on your perspective. Like, on one hand, yes, it forces you to make decisions and prepare properly. On the other hand, it sometimes forces you to play for several hours and realize you've wasted your time because you hadn't remembered to bring enough food. And that's kind of a feel bad situation. Um, I skipped food entirely personally. I decided I was just going to try to tune the gold faucet to make up for the lack of both food and reagent money sinks, which is what, like, in Ultima 4 and 5 they basically were. They were just money sinks. Um, at one point I had considered like letting you get apples from an apple tree and then maybe like feed them to horses or something. And then I'm like, but if you've got an apple in your inventory, shouldn't you be able to eat it? And then if you're going to eat it, might that maybe heal you like a little bit? And then I was like, if you can poke an apple tree and get something that heals you 1 hit point each time, then there's a certain possible optimal play that involves just doing that a lot, and it becomes incredibly tedious. And I was just like, no, never mind. I don't want to deal with this. I feel like there are good food mechanics. Food, being required to regen or improving your regen, like Jeff was just saying, like I believe Nox basically does. Um, World of Warcraft style, uh, various foods that give specific buffs or whatever. Or if there's enough of a crafting section of a game, just being able to make stuff. Ultima Online has a huge number of things that you can make as food, and they don't really do anything. I mean, they improve your regen a little bit, but not super noticeably. In the early days, there were always huge rumors about, oh, if you're well fed, you get better skill gain or whatever, and that was always all bullshit. Um, so like there's fun ways to do food. I just decided to issue it like I wouldn't mind being able to do in real life. Just assume everybody has the little sci-fi nutrition pills. And since I mentioned it, I'll throw over to Megan for the Nox view on food.
Thank you. So let's see. The question was food. What's it good for? What's fun about it? Well, it's good for throwing at gestures who are following you around incessantly because they think it's funny. I mean, it's definitely good for that. Is that fun? Maybe. If I had actually put the mechanic in the game, we might have been able to find out. But unfortunately, I did not. I did not do that. So my thoughts on food are, it's one of those things where it's like more immersive to have it. And it's like also potentially immersion to the point of annoyance. And striking the balance is kind of, I think, what is really like a focus of modern interpretations of CRPG gaming and kind of what we're all doing here. I go back to the 80s and kind of like Golden Flame was saying, Ultima 1, food was like the thing that killed you first and second and third, and it was an awful lot of the game was just, getting enough food to stay alive. And that was pretty common. I think by like maybe in the Ultima series, like maybe like Ultima 4, it toned down a little bit, but the specter of death from starvation was definitely still there. So I think the 80s, you know, sort of the first take on food by the genre was very much let's go for immersion, or perhaps just have it for some other reason, and not a lot of thought was given to, well, is that actually, you know, fun? And ultimately the game, we all had fun playing the game, so it didn't, like, you know, totally prevent fun. But then now, you know, coming back and looking at it, it's like, well, can we make this less, at least less annoying than it was, and doing things like in Noxercast, it's there is no starvation. It's really a mechanic for regenerating health. It's also not the only way to regenerate health, so you can kind of ignore it to some extent if you want, though it's also, food is cheap. You know, it's really not that big of a deal to, you know, kind of take advantage of it, as far as it being a mechanism for healing. So I kind of feel like that's where we are now, is kind of like how do we make food less annoying, and I think a number of us have had some successes with that as well as other games. But actually, I really like this notion of, again, what was it? Food. What's fun about it? Or I guess the way I'm thinking at the moment is like, is there a way to make food fun? Maybe that's like the next frontier of, you know, modern CRPG construction, is actually making the food mechanic not just less annoying, but actually making it fun. I don't know. Is there a way? Is there a way to do that? I'm going to have to seriously consider making food, you know, possibly a missile projectable to launch at those gestures. You know, now that's been brought up. But yeah, I mean that could be interesting to explore further. But that's all I really got on it for now. So I will toss it over to Adam from Realms of Antiquity.
All right. Well, I always noticed that basically there's only one a game designer, and I don't know how accurate this is. He said games are consist of only three principles. Either they require manual dexterity, as in that you got to be able to move fast, or you know, whatever. Puzzle solving, which means you're solving puzzles that are presented to you, or resource management, as in you have a lot of different things you're trying to balance and manage over it, and they could be in turn based, or it could be real time, or whatever. He said, like, all games are just measures of these three things, like, you know. And I don't know if I quite agree with him on that, but I would say food is definitely a resource management thing, and it's essentially in the old Ultima, where food just clicked down with every step you took, and then once it reached zero, your health started ticking down. It's just a second layer of hit points. It's basically, you have these hit points and you have these hit points, and when these are gone, these start going down. When these go down, you die. So it was a gold sink. It was just a way to create a gold sink. It was like health in the old Gauntlet arcade game. It just was ticking down all the time. And so that was so not fun. That, and it was really annoying in Ultima because gremlin monsters would eat your food. So they essentially were taking big chunks of your health away. Like, you know, it made them more lethal than other creatures. So that was just not fun. Now, one of the only original TI CRPGs was Tunnels of Doom, and it had rations you could buy in the game, which we didn't know what they were for initially, because I mean, me and my brother were like 7 and 10, like we had no idea. Uh, but we noticed that, oh hey, when I bought rations, my health went up as I kept walking around the dungeons. So we realized the rations were essentially a slow healing factor. And so when I wrote Realms of Antiquity, I did the same thing, but instead of health, it's fatigue that's recovered. And fatigue is used for spells, and it's also, your fatigue goes down if you overexert yourself in combat or use some of the special abilities I gave the non-magic casting classes. So to me, that worked out pretty well. And then in game, just for fun, for verisimilitude, I have different food types that have different health values and different costs in different places. And eventually I had to expose the mechanic because my players insisted, so they could see, like, oh well, potatoes are much better than just buying this, you know, and more cost effective. But all it does is build up that ration number, and as long as your rations are high, you'll recover fatigue, which is a big deal because you need fatigue. And a lot of times my players will just sit there and hit the space bar and let their fatigue go back up. I eventually had to introduce a mechanic where the higher your fatigue is, the less likely you'll recover fatigue, so that it would slow down exponentially as it got to toward the near bar. Because otherwise, the guys just recovered to full health. And at one point, I said, "Oh, I'll just have so food can only go 75%." They're like, "Fine, I'm just going to play the game at 75% the whole time." So I don't know. That was a mess. But yes, food definitely adds something to the games. And in massive multiplayer games, they have all the different food types that are from the different regions, so it feels a little more interesting. And yeah, as Adam said, like different foods will give you different buffs. I'm a big fan of Fallout 76, and you can do all sorts of different foods that have different impacts. Like if you grilled rad stag meat will boost your weight capacity so you can carry more stuff for like 10 minutes or so. I mean, things like that. And then Fallout 76 introduces another thing, mixed sentiment, and this is something you have to consider: food decay. As in, raw foods will decay rapidly, cooked foods less so, and you can get like perks in the game where you can actually have the food preserve in your backpack longer. But the idea that now your food actually has a ticking time bomb on it, and sooner or later it'll spoil, so you have to make sure you eat it within time. And then they also have hunger and thirst meters too. Like, it's basically how far you want to go with resource management in your game. Like if you want food to be matter, then you got to have all these other things for the player to have to be concerned with. But you don't want to make it so onerous that they're just like, "Oh, screw this. I'm just going to play something else. I'm not interested in starving to death." So it's really about ticking that box, tickling that desire to manage a whole bunch of things. That's I think what it's really about. Greg, did you have any insights on this you wanted to share?
Well, go back to the game that we're releasing. The only food aspect to the game itself is you have victuals that you must maintain. As you visit islands, you must restock on your victuals, otherwise your crew will starve. Going back to the hit points that you were referring to previously, it's the only way that keeps people from staying out on sea for too long, outside of storms and pirates, possibly damaging your ship and such. You have to keep aware of the amount of victuals that you have available to your crews. Otherwise, they starve on the open seas and your game is over. But to pronounce on that a little bit more, to what's fun about it, my kids used to have a blast in Minecraft generating various foods. I'm not sure if it was because they kept telling me, and they were Minecraft hackers. They did just about everything they could with that particular game. But they loved building birthday cakes, pies, things like that. And that was one of their favorite things they would actually generate in Minecraft, were various recipes after they grew the crops and such, and made the various things. So it was kind of interesting how most people were building machines and such, and they were saying, "Nope, I'm building food." I'm like, "All right, go for it." So they had a blast with that one. But yeah, no, pretty much all I have to add.
Nice. Yeah, no, the cake is a fun one in Minecraft because it's one of the few ones that's a static object and you take slices and it reduces as you take more slices out of it. So it's a good game, actually. I'm a pre-alpha tester for Minecraft, so I have a permanent lifetime account.
Nice. I never got into it myself. My kids love that. Or still to this day play it with their cousins. So
Nice. Okay, next question. Inventory. This is another thing CRPGs are well known for, is that if you have characters, they have an inventory of items and they can carry various items. And the question is inventory pressure, as in trying to pressure your players to manage their inventory, a good thing? I would add that I discovered, much to my chagrin, after I'd released Realms of Antiquity, that apparently CRPGs have just abandoned in the modern era the idea of each character having their own inventory. They're like, nope, we're just going to have a party inventory and it's going to be near infinite. And so all these players would complain to me. It's like, well, I ran out of space. And I'm like, you're supposed to be using that stuff, not hoarding it. But the hoarding mentality is rampant in the modern CRPGs. I'll turn it over to other Adam to start on this one.
I'd say it's not just rampant in modern CRPGs, and it has always been the joke of, oh, I've got this healing potion. I'm going to save it till I need it. I'm going to save it till I need it. I just beat the final boss and I have 16 healing potions. Whoops. But yes, is inventory pressure a good thing? I'll kick off by just pointing out that aside from UI and bug fix mods, the most popular Skyrim mods are the ones that remove the encumbrance limits, or at least the encumbrance penalties. Is inventory pressure a good thing? It can be. I mean, obviously, that's kind of going to be the answer for anything like this. You can do it interestingly. If everything you're carrying could have a use, having to choose which contingencies to be prepared for is an interesting tactical decision. I believe this is like a lot of the direction that the Moonring developer is looking to going into for the sequel to Moonring, where you have like 2 slots for each kind of thing, and that's all you can carry with you. But if that's not what's going on, then inventory pressure is mostly just limiting how much gold you get for any given dungeon run. That's basically what Skyrim's encumbrance system is actually doing. Is it's saying, okay, now each time you kill something and it has stuff to loot, go through and figure out what's the heaviest, least valuable thing in your inventory and get rid of it so you can pick up this new thing. And that's kind of tedious. Which is why, occasionally you'll get a game that's just like, this thing is automatically considered trash loot, and when you pick it up, it just converts to gold. Or I think, I haven't played it yet, but I think Solasta had a mechanic where early in the game you basically hire some scavengers and whenever you finish a dungeon, they automatically go and clear out everything in the dungeon, sell it, and then bring you your share of the gold from it. That was very clever. I don't have a party, so I didn't have to worry about, party stash inventory versus individual inventory. I'm currently playing both Pathfinder Kingmaker, where they have a mechanic where there's a party stash, but how much you can store there is based on the total encumbrance limits of the full party. But so you have individual things that are held by a specific person, and so that's all that they have access to when you're in combat. And then when you're out of combat, you can move stuff in and out of this central stash. But I'm also playing Might and Magic 2, where everybody just has 6 slots of inventory and you're constantly shuffling stuff around, and it's incredibly tedious, but it's also incredibly early 80s. Not having a party thing, I just have, you've got an inventory. I give absolutely no in-game reason why there's no limit to my inventory. You can just, somehow you can just wander around with 13 suits of plate mail in your backpack, and that's fine. I didn't bother saying, okay, you have a magic bag of holding or something. Fundamentally, what I ran up into was, if you have an inventory limit, then you have to be able to drop things. If you can drop things, then you have to either deal with the possibility that a player drops a critical quest item, or come up with some reason why the player can't drop a critical quest item. And I felt that having the game just tell you, sorry, you're not allowed to drop that, was just as immersion breaking as just having an infinite inventory. And so I just gave you the infinite inventory and decided not to implement any kind of drop. This does mean that there's a couple of weird Easter egg interactions that are very difficult to create in my game. If you push a scroll or potion into a burning fire, it will catch fire or boil away or something, but you can't just drop a potion and then push it into the fireplace. You need to find one somewhere on the level and get it. So it's not going to actually come up very often. I just thought it was funny. In a future thing, I would like to find a more elegant solution, but this is as much effort as I was interested in putting into setting up the inventory and dealing with that collision of, either way there's something that is kind of at the UI level that's weird. You know, something about the game that I would need to either justify or not justify, and I went with not justify.
Just curious, when you say infinite inventory, does that mean your save game structure will support a player who adds like 1 million items into it, and it will just increase the size of the file accordingly?
Yeah, I'm the one person here, I believe, that's not writing for old hardware. So if I were, then I would obviously need to do a very different solution than I've got. But fundamentally, your inventory looks like, uh, you know, item name and then quantity. And so you do eventually hit a limit on there's only so many gettable object types in the game. So that dimension of the array will only expand ever that far. And then it's just a matter of how large is the integer. That's just how many of this do you have. And fundamentally, you know, like the loot that you're going to pick up lots of is potions and scrolls, and they're consumables. People are going to hoard them, I'm sure. That's fine, whatever. You know, I do try to, I give you a lot to try to encourage you not to hoard them. I don't know if it's working, but you know, there is a limit to how large that the save file can wind up being because of this, because there's literally only so many things that you can get and add to your inventory in the first place.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's, I believe, Nox Archaeist, you did the same design where all items exist in the file and you just have a quantity number. And so that way it can never go past a certain size.
That's not quite the implementation on in Nox, but it feels that way to the player for sure.
So yeah, I will. I'll this time toss over to Greg first. See which if you have any thoughts on this.
Yeah, so in inventory-based games, I've found that the simplest forms of inventory were probably the more enjoyable to play when I was playing various games out there. It was easy to understand what inventory you had and what the purpose of it was. You know, if you had a glass orb, there was a purpose for that in the game. Or a sword, you know, you were fighting with that, or a potion, you knew you were drinking that. Whereas I have played only a handful of games and abandoned them because the inventory was too weird. You know, I was like, what the heck am I even discovering a dead rat for? Why am I going to collect a dead rat? Or can I? And things like that. But going into the various games that I've played from our inventory of games that we have, from Witchcraft, Undead, and Skull Island. Witchcraft, you had to collect things to prove your innocence. In Undead, you had to collect the items to appease the Duke to escape. And then Skull Island, the aspect of inventory is all in collecting and trading and accumulating gold. So, and your ship class determined if you had, I mean, you obviously did not have a limited inventory, but you had a certain number of X items. And there was a finite set of items that you can find on an island and trade with. So, and then of course there were items that you would get for your ship, which were also finite. So yeah, we haven't had too complex of inventory, but going back to my original statement, I was gonna say when it's more broadly scoped and such, it becomes kind of difficult and hard to understand that why it's even part of the game. Where if it's narrowly scoped and there was a purpose to each and every item, it made sense to me. So that would be my take on inventory.
Nice. Who's next?
Let's go to Jeff.
Thank you. So I think, yeah, this notion of inventory pressure is tied in with the hoarding instinct on the part of players, and I think I kind of have to force myself not to think of the hoarding problem from the developer's point of view. Like, it's not a problem for me to solve. It's how the player chooses to enjoy the game. If they want to carry a lot of stuff, fine. That said, on a retro platform, yes, I have to limit the inventory, and so I am limiting the inventory. And items, consumables stack up in the inventory, and regular items don't. So you can have a large number of potions of healing, but not two swords. The swords don't stack up, I should say. They would take up two separate slots in the inventory. I think inventory pressure can be a good thing. I think I kind of enjoy being forced to make those choices. The resource management aspect of gaming that Adam talked about. And one game that's not an RPG, but had really effective pressure like that was Alan Wake. In the original Alan Wake, you had to husband the resources, and those were sort of ammo and batteries for your flashlight. You had to be really careful with those things. It wasn't inventory pressure per se, but it was a sort of akin to that, in that you had to be really careful not to run out of either of those things, and if you did, you were in serious trouble. And that was fun. That was like kept you on the edge of your seat all the time. I think almost everything else I was thinking about inventory was covered by Golden Flame, so maybe I should stop there. Megan, do you have more to say about inventory?
Yeah, so
Don't think you-
when it comes to inventory restraints and things like that, I'm very much a creature of Ultima 5, which really didn't have inventory constraints, or not significant ones. I think it was you could have up to 256 of each item, that sort of thing. 8-bit number limitation. And so, yeah, I mean, hoarding was a very fundamental way to how I played the game, and was actually one of the most fun experiences that I had with the game, playing with a friend of mine at the time that was playing the game at the same time. And it was like there was the main storyline to the game, and we had fun with that. And then eventually we both got stuck on it, and we got probably as many hours of fun out of the game after that as before it, just simply farming sand traps in the desert, or finding rooms and dungeons that had like the most number of dragons, and basically just hoarding loot. And for a while it was like, oh well, hoarding loot, we've got all this money now to buy anything we could ever want in the game. And we did. We tried doing things like building boat bridges from the mainland to Buccaneer's Den, because you could buy ships, and we had the coins, so so we did. Of course, that eventually ran into some limitations on object memory in the game, and the ships in the boat bridge started disappearing, and it really did not work out. But we had the money to do it. Um, and eventually, I think we probably ran out of ideas on silly things to spend money on. But nonetheless, we're still having fun hoarding away and all of that. And so it was just so fun. And so that has always stuck with me as definitely a predisposition towards not having constraints. Nox Arceus doesn't. Um, well, again, not particularly practical ones. You can have up to 256 unique item types in your inventory, and then a quantity of up to 256 of each unique item type. So you can have 256 plate mail, 256 chain mail, so on down the line. Which, while I say it's not a practical limit, players do eventually hit it, because they're just, if there's no reason to pay attention to what's in your inventory, you don't, except when you occasionally need to sell stuff and raise gold. And this was actually probably one of the most significant blunders that I made in the development of the game, had to do with this issue. And I think it was Golden Flame that touched on earlier. It's like, well, if you have inventory limits, then you need to be able to drop stuff and stuff like that. And I wasn't really thinking about it as a limited inventory, except ultimately it was. And so I didn't think about, dropping it. I didn't think about quest items. And well, Ultima 5, it only had a couple of quest items. I think it was the 3 shards, and then the scepter, the crown, and the something else. And it was a very small number, and I think those just like had their own bit flag or something, whether you had them or not. It wasn't really part of. So the main inventory where you could just have up to 256 of every item. Well, the thing was, in Ultima 5, there weren't more than 256 unique items in the game. So, no problem. In that case, it effectively would kind of be like what Adam was mentioning. If it's like, well, they're all there, and it's just what quantity do you have? But I sort of accidentally, in the development of Nox Archaeus, ended up with more than 256 items, which you'd think might be obvious when your item number goes to 257, 258. Oh, I got more, except that's not how it works. Dealing, with hexadecimal item codes, and it's like, well, there's um, an item type code and then a item ID code to form the 16-bit number that actually describes the item. And the item type was either 0, 1, or 2, standing for weapons, armor, or miscellaneous. And then the second byte was just the item ID. So you essentially created a structure where the inventory catalog was limited to 256 unique weapons, 256 unique armor, and 256 unique miscellaneous items. And again, dealing in hex, I'm not looking at. I'm not even seeing the number 256. I'm dealing like, oh, the item, the total item identifier is 0, 1, and then the next byte it's BA or something. And so it was just not, there was not an obvious reminder to me like, whoa, I'm going over 256 items. But between these 3 categories, weapons, armor, and miscellaneous, it added up to more than 256. And I just totally missed it. And at some point, a beta tester is getting a crash error because it's trying to add the 257th item to the inventory file and running out of space. And that's when I sort of, oh, so we need to be able to drop some. Oh, except what about the quest items? And so really, really late, after the game was in a fully functional state and had even been beta tested for a while, I was in a state of like, this is a showstopper, game breaking kind of a thing. I have to deal with this. It doesn't matter how late it is in the process. So I end up shoehorning in a fix, which was basically to try to keep a tally of the number of items in the inventory, and then have a fixed constant for the number of quest items in the game. And when you try to pick up an item, it does the math where, okay, well, 256 minus the number of quest items, so this is the max you can have. How many do you have now? And that's the calculation for whether or not you're permitted to pick up the item. And if you're not, it just says inventory full if you're trying to pick up a non-quest item and that calculation doesn't pass. And if you're trying to pick up a quest item, it automatically lets it in because that's the whole point. Except doing all that in 6502 assembly has like a bazillion ways to make mistakes, and especially when it's all shoehorned in. And so we went through just constant pain of, okay, we think we got it fixed, and then there's another beta release that we put out, and then yet another tester runs into the scenario again. And this was a really slow cycle between fix and finding out, because the tester has to organically get up to that inventory limit in order to experience whether there's going to be a problem or not. And if we tried to cheat and artificially fiddle with the inventory to get it up there, it's like, well, yeah, but that's not really fully testing it, because then we're artificially configuring those counters, and it's like, no, the game code actually has to run and do the counting to be an accurate test. So there's this huge lag time between fix and finding out if it worked. And then if it didn't work, we couldn't even really, it's not like we could even test with the same file because effectively the data is all corrupted. Um, and eventually we got there, we think, as far as I know. People stopped reporting the problem. Um, but yeah, that was really bad. So definitely something I will never forget for future game development. But more broadly on inventory, also want to say that I can also appreciate when there's limits on inventory, depending on how they're done. And Skyrim comes to mind, where yeah, there were limits on inventory, and I didn't find them particularly onerous, and really even though those are popular mods to get rid of them. um, I also thought about, it's like, well, if there wasn't an inventory and like encumbrance limit or whatever it is in Skyrim, there really isn't anything in that game, at least, that would be bringing you back to town, because they said, no, we're not going to do food because food sucks, and healing is easy because it's difficult. Healing just isn't fun. And they made a bunch of other game design decisions which fundamentally I think worked very well, but when you take them all together, if then you said, yeah, screw the inventory limits and all that, you'd never have any reason to go back to town. And I think that's a very important part of the gameplay loop, is you go out adventuring, and eventually something makes your your party not be able to do that forever and go back to town, because otherwise you're just a god or goddess at that point. And that could be a fun game too, but that's an entirely different game. So um, but yeah, that's I think for CRPGs, and I'm using the definition of, I'm talking about like a 1980s or 90s game. I'm always going to feel like, please don't give me limits, or not any like particularly strict ones. For modern games, I think I'm more open to um, experiencing some implementation of the mechanic and so forth. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on it. And is there anyone else who didn't talk about inventory? I think we covered everybody.
I haven't, but look, Greg, you got your hand up?
Yeah. Sorry. I wanted to ask you this question. You may actually hit on this, Adam, and that is, I remember couple games that I played on the Macintosh, and I know my kids interacted with it on a couple of their Xbox games, and that was inventory interactions. For example, in the game that I played, there was absolutely no reason for you to collect a specific item, even though it would let you. You had to collect bombs. I do remember that part. But if you accidentally collected a candle, you blew up, because candle plus bomb, boom. Um, and of course, you had to learn that the hard way. But I was just kind of curious, because I just realized that my developer actually added that kind of concept into the new game as well. And that is, if you collect cocoa, then you have more pirates coming after you because they want that cocoa. they, they want the drug. And I think rum is also another one too, but I know cocoa for sure is. He keeps bringing that up to me. He says, "Go trade cocoa." I was like, "No, I know what happens when you trade the cocoa. You better have a class ship 5, otherwise you're going to go down." That was his cruel joke to me when he was having me test it. But yeah, I was just kind of curious if anybody had experienced that, because I do remember that in a couple of the games I played in the past.
I think that's a great idea, but no, I haven't experienced it where what you have in inventory actually ties in that sort of way. But that's pretty cool.
I mean, I know old text adventures did that.
I was
Like,
gonna say that as well. Yeah.
yeah, because there's the one where your character has to get by a bear, but he gets nervous and he gets sweat as an inventory item, and if the bear smells it, it eats him. So you have to you have to go and like jump in the water to wash the sweat away. So
Or the
text
joy
adventures
of
did seem to like to do a lot of screwy things with inventory.
yeah, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy
Oh, God.
Infocom game,
Oh my God.
where as Arthur Dent you start with no tea as an inventory item,
Mm-hmm.
and if you manage to acquire tea later in the game, the system response is actually no tea dropped when you pick up the tea. and there winds up being a quest that quest. But one of the things you need to do is figure out how to have both tea and no tea in your inventory at the same time.
Yeah, I've never won that one. I mean, that one was
Or
the epitome of the mess with you text
Yep.
adventure that you have to do things in the exact order or you won't win.
yeah, and that's the one where the game, like the parser straight up lies to you. You try to go south into the engine room and it just tells you there's nothing worth going to there. And you have to keep
Yeah.
overriding it. But other Infocom games did things like that to something like if you have the treasures in your inventory in Zork 1, then the thief will show up and steal them from you.
Mm-hmm.
There are definitely things that you don't want to be carrying at the same time. I also didn't do any of that in my current game, but yeah, it's a fun thing to keep in mind as design space to explore.
Yeah. So I guess with inventory, what I was going to say was I hear a lot about it because in Realms of Antiquity, each character can only carry 10 items in addition to the stuff they've equipped. And I've had a couple testers who love one of them. He soloed every single class and won the game with, but he is always complaining about the inventory, that it's too little, and it's partly my fault because I started the game with the original TI memory limitation of only a maximum of 32 kilobytes of CPU RAM. I also cheated and was using an 8K RAM cartridge to get an extra 8K, but even with that, I had so tight space with my coding, and then the UI itself only had like 20, it's only 24 lines of text. So I basically wanted all the inventory to fit on one screen so you could see your equipped items and your backpack items side by side. So, going back since I went to an expanded memory system that gave me a megabyte of CPU RAM, and then it made the game actually much easier to code. See, what I should have done is gone back and go, I can increase this. I can do a scrolling menu now. I could have it so you could scroll and have more items in your backpack. But, that's a lesson for a sequel. So, but one of the other things is the classic Fallout 76 features this. It's not the number of items you have, it's how much they weigh. This goes back to old tabletop RPGs. In fact, the first D&D version me and my brother ever played was the old pink and blue box editions. And what they did the weight, knowing their audience, they did the weight in coins. As in, items have a coin weight. So a sword weighs 30 coins, or this weighs so many coins, because they knew they were going into the dungeon to get money and go out. And so that way you had an easy way of knowing if your character was over encumbered or not. Because you would use like your strength score to determine you can carry 300 coins of weight. So, and some like Fallout 76 does this. It's all based on weight rather than the number of items, which that's the benefit of the modern platform is they can actually have you carry a lot of different unique items, and then it's just determining the weight. And I've seen CRPGs that combine the two and have both, I'm pretty sure Ultima 7 was that way. It was weight based. Like the number of items in the backpack was probably infinite, although not necessarily, because I don't know if anyone read the CRPG Addict's review of Ultima 7. At one point, he started to try to clean up like the polluted lake in the game by picking up all the items, and he actually hit a memory limit, and it started wiping out static objects in the game.
Yep, that'll happen.
So he had to start over from scratch, and then he just left it alone. But
Inventory was such a dumpster fire in Ultima 7.
yeah. Oh god. Oh yeah.
Yeah, say what you want about Ultima 9, but I feel like the patched version of Ultima 9 was like that was when Origin Systems finally figured out how to do character-based inventory where a mouse was involved. They were struggling with it from Ultima 6 and made it worse in Ultima 7, and it took till 9. So, but
yeah, slot based, much like Minecraft, actually.
yeah,
Just the number of slots you have rather than
Yep.
weight. So you can do one, the other, or you can do both. The important thing is this is a resource management thing. Make it fun or make it
Yeah.
interesting. If
Yeah,
it's just going to end up making the player frustrated, it's not a good look.
don't make people sift through the bottomless sack for the individual food items that you have to then feed to the individual players when they start mewling for food every 5 minutes. And,
Yeah. Best
It-
possible add in Serpentile was the F key to just
yes,
freaking shove something in his face and make him shut up.
exactly.
and the other absolute disaster from Ultima 7 that was fixed in Serpentile was finding a locked door and opening up whichever bag you put all your keys in and sorting through and trying each key on the door and trying to remember which ones you've tried and maybe one's covering up another one.
Oops, I put the important key underneath the ham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other games that do things with inventory that make it their own little kind of mini game, like Diablo with things taking up a different number of slots. So you kind of you have Tetris crossed with your inventory. Some modern CRPG like Pathfinder 2 has upgraded from weight and just items to bulk as a characteristic that things have. So some things might be, light but awkward, and so are like bulk 2, and then you have a certain number of bulk that you can carry. I thought that was pretty clever, a good way to provide an encumbrance limit without needing you to sit there and constantly be adding up the number of pounds every single thing you're carrying weighs.
Yeah. I like the Diablo slot system. I was almost thinking about doing it in my current roguelike project, but then I realized this is really, you need a mouse to do this. If you have to do this with a joystick or keyboard, it's not fun. So
No, wow,
your
yeah,
controls matter with your systems.
also true.
Okay, so I'm gonna skip over to I think most interesting question because I know you have a hard stop, Adam, at 10. So we're going to go to AI as a tool in game development, retro or otherwise, like creating art or even text conversation for NPCs. What is your feelings on the matter? Let's see. Let's start with Megan.
Oh, sure. Put me on the spot. Yeah, well, I would say I don't have a strong opinion on this. I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens to get a better feel for how successful AI implementations are and how do they feel, how do players react, all sorts of things, which Greg and his team at 8-Bit Check are, being the pioneers right now, which he will tell us more about, I'm sure, with their use of AI in developing the manual and I believe NPC dialogue and some things like that. But I think to me it comes down to a couple of things, or I should say, there's a couple of components to this that I see. One is let's take art for example. Not in-game art, but print art, things in box cover, manual, feelies, that sort of art. In Nox Chaos, as well as the Lord of Storms expansion, I worked with a couple of different artists for the development of all of that art, and they did a spectacular job, and am extremely grateful for them for doing what they did. Also, I also spent a lot of time managing the process, necessarily to produce the final result, because ultimately, they were trying to make something that was a vision in my head, and that had to be explained, and that had to be refined, and so on down the line. And so there was nothing about the process that I think was like atypical to how that kind of creative process works. Um, it was just as a project manager, something I observed was a significant time investment. So again, thinking as a project manager, as I look towards Nox KS2, I wonder, well, with the art that we will have for some of the art for Nox 2 is done. Like right now in the background you're looking at, this is the box cover art for Nox 2, or it's kind of a zoomed in section of it, and this was done by a human artist. who also had done the artwork, the external artwork for the Lord of Storms expansion. And I think he did a great job, and so that will be the box cover art. But now, what do we do for the manual cover? What do we do for art inside the manual? That's still, that's still an open question. And again, as a project manager, I could see it's like, well, if we used AI, I would save a whole bunch of time on that I could then use towards doing something else, or doing something else better, or releasing the game earlier, various other sorts of things. So I'm being very pragmatic about considering it. At the same time, there's the question of quality. Obviously, AI is getting better and better. But that's a question. What is the result produced at the end, as well as how does it feel? Ultimately, we're trying to, all of us, I think, are trying to, with these games, recreate a nostalgia experience for what we were engaged with as kids, the games we were playing as kids, and that experience we had with those early computers. And that's we're still finding out what the limits are around that. For example, people seem to be able to have an effective nostalgic experience when a game is played in an emulator versus on original hardware. Exarchast, you can play it on the original Apple IIe, Apple IIc hardware, as you can with Skull Island, as you can with Realms of Antiquity, and with Jeff's game. They're all playable on real hardware, and I know mine at least, and I think everyone's that's developing on original hardware. It's also playable in emulators, and that seems to be acceptable to players. Maybe in a perfect world, we'd all be playing on original hardware. I mean, that might vary from person to person. But ultimately, people seem to feel like they can get enough of that nostalgic experience playing in an emulator on a modern computer, even though that's not how they would have done it in the 1980s or early 1990s. So it's not, it seems like it's not an absolute. You don't have to 100% replicate the experience in order for it to be fun, because with the original hardware emulator option, we've all essentially given people the option to 100% replicate it, and most actually choose on that particular point to go with the technically less authentic experience, but yet more convenient and fun and all of that. So with the like AI generated art, or AI generated conversation dialogue for NPCs, things like that. Is there any noticeable difference? If there's not, then I suppose arguably you can't feel like you've missed out on what you don't know. If there is a noticeable difference, how significant is it, and how does that affect the nostalgia experience, and is that important to people? Another consideration out there is, even if it is not detectable, it is completely like on par and the same. There might be what we might see happen is some projects say, you know what, we're going to do it 100% the old-fashioned way, just so we can say that we did. And from a branding standpoint, that might become a thing that becomes important to a segment of the audience, that even though objectively we can't necessarily tell the difference, if a project says that they did it the old-fashioned way and we believe them, that we're going to credit them in our minds in some way. Or maybe not. Those are just things that I think about around this topic, as far as how as it emerges, what some of the mechanics on it might be. And I'm going to wait and see. And I'm really glad that there are pioneers like Greg and his team at 8-Bit Shack that are going to explore this and see how it all goes. So those are my thoughts on the subject, and I think I will actually throw it to Greg to pick right up on this and talk about what he and his team are doing with it.
So yes, and it comes back from my background too. One of my aspects of my day job is I work for the University of Texas, and I'm part of the AI development team there. where basically we're developing our own student-driven artificial intelligence interaction systems and such. So it was kind of natural to me to utilize AI in my normal workflow, and didn't even think twice about it when I was helping out with the use of AI in the game. So neither one of my developers or my creative people, Dan or Mark, use AI. So it was all on me. They were saying, I'd come up with certain aspects and they go, no, we need more. And I was like, okay. And being, if I spent hours and hours on end, I probably could come up with something, but I am not an artist. So I could not have, absolutely not have drawn what you see on the background for Megan there. But I can put something together as a technical article and such. If you've given me all the elements, I can, expressively put something in graphical form that explained what they were trying to put into the article in terms of procedures and such. So when it came down to utilizing it on ours, when I was writing up the manual, I was going, you know what? They're talking about pirates. I wonder what would be neat is have a quote as if a pirate was talking to you about this particular section of the manual. And that goes back to me where we used to have, everyone does it, is talk like a pirate day. Everyone tries to say, walk the plank, or you scurvy scallywag, or whatever. Now people at my university, when we have those days, I know they've gone to AI, because no one can come up with some of the stuff on their own unless they're rapidly researching novels and such in the library and things. So it can both bring joy and greatness, or it can also bring a lot of, oh, you're an AI user. Oh, you can't. That's funny. You came up with that on your own. And then going back to what you were saying about that earlier, Megan, which was, are people going to be purists, or are they going to be utilizing AI? And of course, you have every type out there. I mean, there's the people, AI deniers, they're calling it clankers, from the old Star Wars realm. And so they've picked up on all that. But for us in our manual, in our game, no part of the actual game itself had utilized AI. It was all in the generation of the manuals, pretty much where I use most of it. And it was all in some of the graphical work, as well as some of the quoted text that you will see inside the manual, where, yeah, I'm pretty clever. I'm pretty creative in that regard, but talking like a pirate, I never was very good about that on that day. So when I used AI, I was saying, okay, hey Copilot, hey Chat GPT, I need you to come up with a quote that describe, a pirate ship on open seas who's affected by a storm, and how they would talk to their crewmates, or describe that situation. And it was amazing what it would come up with. And of course, it's quite verbose, so you had to take what it had and kind of trim it down a little bit and such. And then the one piece that I would have to tell you that I was quite thoroughly impressed with, I've actually seen other AI art out there that was quite impressive, but as with anybody, because like I said, I work in AI, people throw images at me and go, that's AI generated and that isn't. I love those kind of challenges when they come posed to me. It's like, which one's AI and which one isn't? I go, that one's AI over there. And you can figure it out. And you can most definitely, as my friend did, call me out on it when he goes, your cover art on your book or your manual, that's AI art. And I go, yeah, caught me. So, I mean, if you look at the book, you can, camera's not doing it any justice there. I'll leave it to you all when you get a copy of it. But in the book itself, the pirate ship's mast is intertwined with the riggings of your ship. And it's like, well, in the real world, that obviously wouldn't happen. And of course, the AIs are terrible with human interaction. So pirate or the captain who's playing the game on the Apple II in there, his right hand is perfectly formed. His left hand is missing 3 fingers. And I didn't notice it at first until it was too late. I was like, oh, well, it's already in there. I could have spent hours going through that with a fine-tooth comb and fixing things, but I didn't. So now people are, now I've kind of make it, who will find that out and bring that to my attention? Like, your captain only has 2 fingers and a thumb. So yeah, we're reutilizing it. And I've in my retro world, because I'm not as spring chicken anymore. Even when it comes to like Applesoft Basic or things like that, I don't remember all the Applesoft basic commands. I'm a Python programmer, so that comes to mind. But Applesoft, I remember writing all that, and I've written many programs in that, including one of the mini games that comes as part of the game is your pirate game. I want to do some of the fancier things that I knew could be done. So upon Google searches and such, I'd pipe that into AI and I'd say, can you refine this and help me figure out exactly what kind of source code I would use in Applesoft Basic to make that happen? And of course, it spit out, I'll go, try this. And I was like, try it out. And I go, nope, that doesn't work. And you report back to AI. I was like, yeah, that didn't work. Here's a suggestion. And said, okay, when I try that and go, hey, you got it closer. It's kind of interesting interacting with AI in that regard, saying, hey, you gave me some code. Oh, that didn't work at all. It crashed or whatever. And you report that back to AI and go, oh, so sorry. Here's the right code. Like, interesting. Okay, but thank you. And plug it in and it works for you. But yeah, I mean, we even utilize it in my day-to-day work at work. I use GitHub and Visual Code, and constantly in my editor, I'd be typing code in and it'll go, hey, I've just finished this for you. You didn't have to finish it. And I'm like, whoa, yeah, that's pretty clever. And I'll take its suggestion and I'll go, okay, they didn't work exactly the way I wanted to, but hey, you just saved me an hour worth of typing for that function or whatever. Thank you. But I've got to put my own spin on it and make it actually do what we wanted to do. But so yeah, I mean, AI is definitely out there, and people are definitely utilizing it. And I even took it to the extent of after I'd beaten Undead, I asked Undead, if I was giving you this function within the game, how would I defeat level 4? And that's where AI actually failed on me. It came up and it says, since I don't have a way of playing the game myself, I have no earthly idea how to help you on that. I was like, oh, well, at least you're a truthful answer. Thank you very much. But there's different parts out there, and there are pros and cons of AI. And like I said, people have called it clankers, and there's garbage in and garbage out. So yeah, it all depends on what your stake in is. As with all things, don't trust everything that it spits back out to you because they make mistakes. But
well, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing. I was really looking forward to hearing you talk about how you were utilizing AI and how it's turning out and things like that. That's really great.
Who's next?
oh, that's right. I'm supposed to pass the baton. Let's go with one of the Adams. Let's go to Adam Goldenfling.
All right. My short answer is no. I do plan to put a little seal on the box that says 100% human made. And I am pretty extremely opposed. I don't want to sound like I am trying to say bad things about people that do use it. And I worry about coming across that way. So there's AI for the creative aspects of stuff, art, dialogue, the writing and manuals, whatever. And there's AI like Claude, Copilot, kind of coding agents kind of stuff. I don't have any experience with the coding agent stuff yet. By the time they came along, my code base was far too large and involved for me to be able to get AI stuff is particularly great for hey, I need to figure out how to interface with this new package that I've never used. Can you write me, a bridge? Can you do these kinds of things? I'm well past that stage. and I can't get, I can't go in and tell AI, hey, can you write the object definition for a new item because I need this or whatever. It's and it has not come up for work either. And it's for various reasons, it's not too likely to. So as a programmer, going to be a little bit left behind on that if the state of the art does move to the point where, to get hired, you're expected to have experience with these things. But that's a problem for future me. But as far as the creative side of things, I'm opposed, not entirely on grounds of that it creates, that it can't do fingers well, or like these kinds of things are currently problems but are solvable and are not inherent to the problem of AI. I have a general problem with AI because the internet is becoming worthless because so much AI slop is on it, because I have very close personal friends whose published books are in the set of books that Meta admitted that they pirated to train their AI. I know artists that have left the profession because it is no longer possible to get paid for art. And we are destroying the environment in order to relieve creative people of the shackles of ever being able to get paid for doing the things they love ever again. And I just want nothing to do with it. Sorry.
Well said. Gracefully done.
And I will pass to the other Adam.
All right. So, funny enough, not recently at a convention, Dragon Con, it was discovered that one of the artists in Artist Alley was selling AI generated art. This was a legit artist, and they used AI, I guess, to just generate a bunch of stuff so that they had merch to sell. They were expelled from the con when it was discovered. So, and I will say I have a lot of artist friends too, and to me it's like it's one thing to train your model with art, it's another thing to steal it, which a lot of authors are also angry because their works were taken and put into the AI machines without their permission. And hopefully the legalities of this, I mean, I'm like, I get it, you would need stuff to train models, but you should have asked for permission. You should have paid a fee to the artist for the right to use their work. So hopefully the legalities of that will work itself out, and those tech companies that basically stole things will end up having to pay for it. I mean, who knows how many years that'll take. That said, AI can be useful. My current company got a Copilot license, and it was strongly encouraging us to use it. And I would say the one good thing with AI is it really helps as a software engineer, that it can help you find that freaking obscure way you're supposed to implement this package in Java or something. Because, in the old days, we just Googled it and hoped somebody on Stack or Overflow had implemented it before. AI is making it a lot easier for it to pull that up. And as you said, it's not always right. And I would say I was particularly impressed because when I open up Copilot, I'm like, okay, I want you to write me a quick sort in TMS 990 assembly, the assembly language of the TI. And it did. And it even recognized the fact it had no native stack implementation and noted that as a potential problem. And the code actually looked pretty good. So I was like, wow, I'm kind of impressed. You might have to try it, Megan, with 6502. But and like using it, for example, for writing, like I said, I'm mad at the companies. The AI tool, I would say, I have a lot of coworkers who aren't English as their second language. This is kind of nice for them because I've noticed many times they don't know how to write clean, clear English easily. So if they have a tool that helps them do it better, that's a good thing. And obviously you don't just copy and paste it. You maybe say, I don't know how I want to say this, and maybe AI will give you well, say it like this, and you're like, ooh, that's a good start. But then you're going to take it and you're going to refine it into your own form, you know. So with that, that's all good. Now that said, there are limits to AI, and there's one in particular. So my brother also feels the same as I do, but we use like Bing's image creator because we run a virtual tabletop role-playing game, and he likes to generate monster images, or we generate our character portraits, whenever we make new characters. And that personal use of AI art, I feel okay with that because we're not trying to sell it. We're not trying, and in fact, that would be the one thing. If you're going to use AI art, that's great. Make sure you say that it's AI art. Don't try to say it's not. Like, call it out. Like, the art in this was created in this Chat GPT 40 or something. Just and it equally, other Adam is, if you have no AI generated art, it's okay to say that. In the RPG industry, there's actually a big push to make sure that you say 100% human generated artwork. There's a big controversy because they've discovered Wizards of the Coast, the current D&D publisher, discovered that the cover art of one of their books that they hired an artist to do, he used AI art to generate it and didn't tell them. So that was a big mess. But my brother and I discovered something weird with the Bing image creator. It will not create pictures of undead, like zombies, vampires, or anything like that. If you try, you put all the prompts you want in there, and it will never generate them except like cartoon versions. I actually have a friend. Who, when I worked at Microsoft, she was actually one of the principals on the image creator, and I tried to message her this question, and she didn't answer. And I think it's probably because she can't answer, which is fine. But I decided I'm gonna just put the word ghoul in. This is like ghouls are monsters. I mean, it should generate something eating flesh or something, nasty looking, right? This is what Bing put back to me. What even? Like, that's not where. Did you think I said goat? Is that why it has horns? Why is it rainbow colored?
I absolutely want to add that monster to my next D&D game, though.
I'll send you the pic. I'll drop the pic in Discord for you if you want.
It's a Planescape game. It'll fit in just fine.
No, yeah, it would. You'll have to add a circus somewhere. But that's the point, is the best theory me and my brother could come up with is there must be some legal thing they're doing and blocking it. Because I do know in China, it's not legal to show dead bodies in video games.
I was going to speculate about a China thing.
Mm-hmm.
If the same thing goes with generating facial images of current figures, such as political figures and current artists or or significant figures out there, AI will refuse to animate those unless, well, especially in the public domain. Unfortunately, there are, to our despise, both Adams have expressed this. They're unfortunately the underground of AI out there, which allows you to do this. But if you're using any of the more forefront versions, Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude, all those, then yes, they'll refuse to do so.
I noticed that because my girlfriend is a huge fan of Misha Collins from the show Supernatural. Mm-hmm. So I could generate images of his character, Castiel, from the show, but if I put his real name in, it said that's a real person. I can't generate art images of that.
That's correct. I think a lot of it comes back from, I mean, if you think about it, there's the chances of pornography and things like that comes into it, as well as depicting those particular individuals in less than desirable situations.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my friends came to me and says, yeah, I just can't get him. I wanted to have Donald Trump snorting cocaine. I was like, but it wouldn't do it. I was like, well, there you go. That's not going to happen.
There's a reason for that.
I know that the Star Wars guys, when they were doing like the Mandalorian, and they used Mark Hamill's, doesn't sound like a young Mark Hamill anymore. So they actually used AI sound to recreate his younger voice. But when they talked about it, they were they're like, we take this is a big responsibility because people could basically abuse this technology to create like false statements that sound like a person, so
Oh, it
we're
happens all
taking
the
it
time.
very seriously.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah. I mean, as with all things, no matter what you come up with, AI right now is just the most prominent thing to pick on and hate and or love, either way you look at it. I mean, it's the same thing goes, within every aspect of our lives and society is that there's always going to be the bad parts and the good parts of anything that you think about. I mean, even before AI, there was plagiarism, and people copying other people's works and passing it off on their own and things like that. But they many times either do not get caught or they would be called out. Um, and going back to like another good aspect, I'm sure if you all are fans of the Beatles, but their latest song they put out, or obviously the Beatles didn't put it out, but it was a song that was already written. It was a demo tape that was found, and you could hear this TV in the background, well, because he was in there playing it and trying to just, this is my concept of this song and such. And they pulled together, Ringo and John and everybody else, and other various musicians, and they used AI during that time frame to actually help fill in the gaps where like the TV's voice or sound was muffled him, and such. And the result was phenomenal. I mean, I would say probably 95% of the song was all him, but the AI helped clean it up a little bit. And then, like I said, it filled in some of the gaps. But then they actually, once they figured out the score of the music, they had other musicians in the group playing those parts of the song. Ringo playing the drums and everybody else playing guitars or bass, whatever, in the background, and it came out fantastic. It was phenomenal. So in those situations where you're already working with your material, you're just asking AI for help to fill in gaps and things. I think that's a good use. But going back to the Golden Flames part of it, I totally agree with you. There's going to be always going to be the bad parts of it. I mean, the same game goes for everything, but
There's also the problem that AI describes a million different systems. The AI that was used to help isolate the Beatles stuff is not all that closely related to the large language model stuff that consumed the entire internet for training material. Um, you've got AI is might be described for like self-driving vehicles or something. That's like a whole completely different AI. Moving the Optimus and whatever the robots that Tesla is trying to put out. Like that's kind of AI, but it's another almost completely unrelated. And all of these like it makes discourse about it be very confusing because you can have like an AI that has been trained and do pattern recognition and to find cancer cells, and that's like unmitigatedly great. And but it's not actually that closely related, except for the way that you train a system to chat GPT as a large language model. So it can be hard to talk about also because you have to kind of be clear about what you're actually doing, what went into it, what you're using.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, you absolutely got to just make sure that you support those who are developing LLMs that are uh, doing it for the good thing, and making sure that you call out and do not support those individuals or companies and such that are utilizing it for more nefarious or unscrupulous reasons and such. So yeah, yeah, you're right. I mean, I do that even for like credit card companies and businesses that I do business with. It's like I refuse to do business with you guys because you don't go with my values.
Yep.
I'm not going to support you. So I think that all goes in the same row.
I mean, yeah, you work at a university. I know there's the big issue of students trying to use AI to write their term papers, and that you have to actually use AI to recognize that this term paper was written by an AI.
Yep, those are some of the tools that we've implemented in my daily work levels. Pedagogical rationale, and there's also the use of at least the AI that we wrote for our students to use. It doesn't give them the answer like many AI language models out there. Instead, what it does is it says, the student will ask them a question. So, hey, explain to me how the H2O molecule in chemistry is utilized in corrosion of iron. And it'll go, okay. It doesn't give them the answer. It doesn't go out there and says, oh, well, that's oxidation and da 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 da. Instead, it goes, well, have you ever discovered that when H2O gives off its oxygen molecule and it combines with another such, what that interaction will be? So instead of giving them the answers, it actually asks them more clarifying questions so that they come up with the answer themselves. So none of the AI that's available to our students, at least at the free level, or developed by the university, actually gives them the answers. And we love that part. And we've asked a lot of the students who are utilizing, they go, we love it because it's engaging us. And then of course you have the 10% who are going, dang it, I was hoping to get my 4.0. It's like, yeah, no, it's not going to do that for you. Yeah, it's out there. And yes, we had to struggle with those aspects as well. And I think that applies to literally every industry out there who's utilizing it in one shape or another.
Yep, and I noticed a couple weeks ago there was this. I noticed a random post on Facebook. It was about like bikers coming to a funeral for a little boy's father and all that. And then I started seeing variants of it the next day and the day after that, and I realized, crap, this is an AI generated piece of crap. It. So.
Yeah. It is out there, unfortunately, and as Golden Flame was referring to, a lot of people out there writing news articles and things like that, and/or original works, stories and books. They're refusing to do so because it's making them extremely hard for them to stand out in the crowd of creative articles and things like that, and/or having their stuff plagiarized. And it's horrible. It really is. And unfortunately, that's where the money is. And,
I mean, in the end, it's the evil behind it all is still at least the human beings. The AIs are just the innocent tools. Because it's human beings who did the bad stuff, and it's human beings who are using it for the good stuff too. Yeah. Jeff, did you want to sing in on this one?
Yeah, so I definitely share Golden Flames and other Adams' concerns about the ethical issues with the provenance of all the training data. I think I would draw a line between text and images as being problematic, and less problematic is code, because you have to opt in to putting your code on the internet, right? You have to make your GitHub repo public. You have to publish snippets on, you opted in. And typically the reason people make code public is because they want to share it. So LLMs, generative AI trained on public GitHub repos, etc. I'm better with that, and I use that stuff frequently in my day-to-day work. That said, I did use Midjourney to generate the art for my Steam page for Mythfarer. That's my only use of AI or generative AI from an artistic point of view, and that does stick in my craw a bit. I sort of have it in the back. I was kind of under time pressure, and I wanted to get that out there, but I sort of have it in the back of my mind to go back and actually create some art myself, which will be crap, but at least it'll be mine, and update the Steam page with my crap art.
Placeholders it makes sense to me. You kind of just want to get like I said, I'm waiting for the legal stuff. I'm waiting for the big companies to get ordered that you have to go and pay restitution to every single person you've taken.
That would be awesome.
Art and text.
Yes, that would
But
be great.
you know, and you know, like I said, placeholders, not you know, you can always go back and there's some great pages where artists will put their works up, and that you can go and ask that artist for permission. Hey, I like your image, or hey, can I commission you to do an image for me?
Yeah.
That's essentially, I found the art I wanted for the box of ROA from an artist down in Brazil. I think he's in Brazil, and I basically asked him permission if I could use it, and he said go ahead. So
Great. Awesome.
Mhm.
In
yeah, I
terms
got
of
lucky. It was a great image, but you know.
in terms of using generative AI for the project, I do. Well, just recently I was experimenting with music. I wanted to build a utility pipeline to go from Bitwig, music composing software, into something that I can play on the color computer. And on the color computer, you have to synthesize the actual waveform that goes out the speaker. You have to every single sample in that waveform you have to push out yourself. So so I wanted to sort of prep that path from the tooling perspective. So I wrote some code that can take the MIDI output from Bitwig and turn it and actually synthesize sounds. And so I wrote a little C++ utility to do that for me, and maybe half of that was vibe coded, as they say, right? I started saying, I said to Copilot, just write me a small app that uses direct sound to fill a sound buffer with a waveform that's generated on the CPU. And you press it when I press a button, it'll play the sound, and it did that, and that was great. And I developed it from there to do exactly what I want. But that is so these sort of ancillary utilities has been my only use of generative AI, other than the Steam art, and nothing whatsoever in the product itself is the game itself is even vibe coded that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's an irony that software developers you'd think would be the ones most worried about losing their about losing their jobs, because of course management would be like, great, we'll just have AI write the whole application for us. We'll put the business requirements in, and we don't need you guys anymore. You're fired. And of course, that doesn't happen because AI can't. It can be used to write code, but it can't be used to design things like that. Although, who knows where it's going?
Yeah. Ask me again next week, right?
But then again, AI will run into the same problem software engineers do, which is the stupid users don't know what they want. So
yeah.
So I think we have job security for a while yet, but also it's like it makes perfect sense to me that software developers created the AI and, as usual, did not think about the ethical issues behind it, because it was engineers way back when who designed the internet or designed C code and stuff. And it's like, well, what if someone tries to hack your code? It's like, well, who would do that? It's like it's just total naivety about the maliciousness of other human beings, you know.
And I do appreciate that part, that topic you just brought up, which is our information security office. They utilize AI to help do pen testing, as well as when we submit code or applications to them, they will utilize their own trained. I mean, they're not utilizing any other people's out there. They train their own LLM to blast through source code and look for vulnerabilities based on all the various models and information that's already out there, to help them find, oh, well, you've got a 0-page problem or a Stack Overflow problem or a pointer declaration issue or whatever. So they utilize it there, and it's fantastic. And they also use it on our main network to decipher when like for my F5 appliances and such, they utilize it there to ensure that all the traffic inbound and outbound is user created and not a bot disguising traffic as such to get it out of the university's network, being proprietary information or such. And I applaud them on that, because it helps us keep us more secure. And that's again going back to a good usage versus a less
Yeah.
than good usage. So
Yeah. Okay, I think we're at time. I believe Golden Flame, you need to take off.
I've got about 5 minutes.
Got about 5 minutes. You want to try to squeeze one last question in?
Sounds good.
Okay, let's
And,
go.
and y'all can continue without me if you want to get to the last question we did.
I think we can just do one more. It's dungeons. Of course, they're a critical part of CRPGs, coming, of course, from Dungeons and Dragons. So, how do you justify that dungeons exist in your game world? Is it a big deal if it doesn't make sense? It's just there, or what? Let's start with you, Golden Flame, and let you answer the question first.
Yeah, it's always fascinating looking at, like Ultima 4 kind of has said there are dungeons because they are some kind of spiritual antithesis to the shrines, and so therefore they exist. Okay, that's it. I do kind of justify them in my game. For some of them, the justification is insane wizards, which is also my justification for a lot of the weirder monster types. That's just kind of a backstory thing. For many of my dungeons, their justification is that they are the connection between the surface and the underworld is where a precursor race used to live. This is all stuff that you can find out some things about if you explore enough, but it's not necessary to know anything about to finish the game. I know that it's true and it may come up in future games. And then once the precursors left, the dungeons existed, and so stuff moved into them. What I don't justify is a lot of the puzzles in the dungeons. Many of those are there because sometimes gameplay has to trump flavor. And if every dungeon was just fight your way through a slightly different ecology, then that could be interesting if you can differentiate the ecologies well enough. But with the system that I have, that was not a thing. And so, yeah, some of the dungeons have puzzles where you have to flip the right switches or, explore these Disney-like set of rafts floating in a circle, and figure out how to turn that system back on. Whatever. Why are these things here? One good thing possibly is that since I don't explain all of the possible backstory and history, maybe there is a reason some of these things exist. Can't rule it out, but I don't explain it. I do think because I am specifically, like many of us, trying to imitate and invoke the feel of the Ultima series in specific, but some other games as well. Like one of my dungeons is specifically a Bard's Tale throwback. There are dungeons because there are dungeons in what I'm trying to make people nostalgic for. So there's an extent to which I justified them on a macro scale, and a lot of the individual pieces are just there because they need to be there because it makes for a better game if they're there.
Nice.
And I will throw to Jeff this time.
Okay. So I'm early in generating the content for my game. So I have yet to have a dungeon that isn't justified in some way. Plus, any cave turns into a dungeon in my lore because the deeper you go in the earth, the closer you are to the sort of generative spirit that generates life. That's part of the backstory. Well, there's quite a bit more to it than that, but the deeper you go, the closer you are to the source, the more likely it is that some creature will generate down there. So life in general will form out of nothingness. So caves tend to be populated, and because that's probably enough on that point. in terms of what you said about puzzles, I have one dungeon so far, which actually is sort of a pseudo Egyptian pyramid kind of thing. And these people are called anyway, there are stones that can float. And so there's push walls where you can go around and push walls around, and there's small puzzles to do with that. But that was the whole economy and society was built around their magical ability to make stones float. So that's how I justified having those aspects in the dungeons. And this is a tomb, this particular dungeon, so they're actually trying to make it hard for you to get to the inside of it, because you're not supposed to desecrate tombs. So I think that's probably going to be my general approach, is that the dungeon will exist because I have come up with a reason for it to exist first. I have to admit, in my old RPG, back in the 80s, there were dungeons. They were not justified by anything at all. There were holes in the grounds with the door on it, and they were filled with monsters and treasures and traps and things, and because that's just how RPGs are done. But I'm taking a much more careful and thoughtful approach to this time.
I'm gonna jump in here and say that I'm going to have to look forward to hearing the rest of the answers when I watch the recording along with everyone else. Because yeah, I have to run. I am celebrating my birthday today.
Happy birthday.
Later in the week.
Happy
and
birthday.
I'm going to the beach and have told people that they can find me there at a certain time. And so I should get there on time. So this was lovely. And I look forward to doing this again sometime whenever we all get around to it again.
All right.
It was a
Have a good
pleasure
day.
meeting you, Adam. Take care.
Bye.
Have a good day.
And thank you all again for the earlier start to enable me to do this as well as the rest of my day.
Sure.
Have a good one.
Happy birthday. Take care.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
All right. Jeff, who you handing off to?
You.
Oh, okay. So, obviously Dungeons, go back to Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, when early players asked TSR, the creator of Dungeons and Dragons, like, well, why are all these dungeons everywhere? They're like, oh, because dragons, building castles on the surface make no sense. Underground is safer, there's kind of a weak explanation, to be honest. But the main thing was, back in the old days, the dungeons really did just exist, and there's even a random dungeon generator in the original Dungeon Master's Guide that's just nuts. If you actually try to use it, you end up with some funky results. And the joke was, in the old days, it's a 10 by 10 room and there's a dragon in it. It's like, seriously? What does he eat? Where does he poop? Like, what the heck? So that's where a lot of that came from. But yes, with Realms of Antiquity, I worked hard to make sure that every dungeon had a reason to be there, that there was an easy explanation for why there was a particular underground thing here. There's only one dungeon I didn't do that with. It really is just there to be there, and that's because I was doing a homage to an old TI game that was extremely obscure called Doom of Modular, and it was a crap game that had a weird copy protection that literally overwrote the internal code somehow, because if it broke out into extended basic was messed up. But and it was like a really bad wizardry clone too. But the manual was great. It had a great exotic description that you're going to go and retrieve the staff of power from the dungeon of dread and blah blah blah. So I said, I'm going to take that and I'm going to make that better. I'm going to make a cursed land. I'm going to put all of that in there. But then after that, it was kind of inspired by Stranger Things. They made the whole area sound like the underground. Yeah, and I even put in monsters that looked like the monsters from Stranger Things too. But then when I got to the Dungeon of Dread, other than using living statues, which were a creature from Tunnels of Doom, that, but I decided to put them in and make them the weeping angels from Doctor Who. So there's points in the dungeon where you turn a corner and you look back and the statue that was in a thing is moved. And that their little graphics have them with their eyes covered and stuff too when you actually get into combat with them. But then I was like, what else can I do with the dungeon to make it fun? I thought, well, I'm putting the rabbit from the death rabbit from Monty Python and the Holy Grail in here. Let's put more. I'm going to put in the blancmange, which is an extremely obscure Monty Python flying circus reference. You pretty much have to own the DVD set to be able to see it because they have blocked the ability anyone from putting up episodes on YouTube, which is kind of counterproductive for them because nobody can watch these, you know. But they had giant blancmanges from outer space eating people, so I put them in as a slime creature with a devour ability and stuff like that. So even though the Dungeon Dread had no reason to be there, at least I made it fun. so all in all, that was like the only dungeon. The only other thing I didn't do, I almost wanted to make one of the characters comment on it. I had a big desert region, but there was no pyramid. There was no pyramid dungeon. That was like the one thing I didn't do because I thought it's so cliche. Like, you know, I mean, the pyramids were all built in a 200-year period anyway. Like, and then they discovered like afterwards that it's not really a good idea to advertise where your grave is to tomb robbers. So I just like, no, I'm gonna skip the pyramid. Maybe in a sequel I'll do it, and I'll have a character a meta fourth wall break the wall and say, "Whoa, finally a pyramid dungeon." So anyway, let's see. Let's go to Megan.
So, yeah, I have some thoughts on dungeons, but also just wanted to briefly comment on the AI discussion. I really appreciate everybody candidly sharing their thoughts on this. I really hadn't put a lot of thought into the subject coming into this, and what you all shared, I mean, it makes a lot of sense and is definitely helping to shape my views on the subject. So, thank you on that, as well as to Golden Flame, who is no longer with us, but thanks to him as well. On the subject of dungeons. So, the thing with dungeons is, to me, that technically I don't think they're a common part of RPGs, but not necessarily a critical part. What's really, I think, the critical part of an RPG is you need a dangerous area for players to go into and explore and do things and then come back to a safe area, or at least that's like the classic loop. And it just happens that dungeons, the hole in the ground and all that, has become a very common, if not almost ubiquitous, mechanism for that. But actually, I think Greg's game Skull Island is a good example of how there's other ways of doing it. I see it as a role-playing game because you're stepping into the shoes of a ship's captain and exploring the ocean, and the ocean, well, that is the dangerous area. That's where you're going to run into the pirates and these sorts of things. And it would actually be kind, for a game that is really focused on pirates, would be kind of very out of place to just have a whole bunch of holes in the ground that you're then going out into. I mean, maybe the occasional pirates cove or cave or something could make sense, but so that came to mind as sort of an alternative approach to the RPG formula, where you can kind of avoid it all together if you wanted to, or then again, maybe you don't want to. And I mean, I certainly grew up playing games that had dungeons, and so that's kind of instilled in me as like something that, if it's an open world Ultima style game, I certainly have a certain expectation the dungeons are going to be there, and I might miss them if they weren't. If it was a complete open world game that had oceans as well as mountains, as well as the plains, and somewhere in there I'd be expecting the hole in the ground. Where is it? Now, do they need to make sense? I would say that I certainly had fun playing the games of yore where they didn't make sense, they didn't have an explanation. like Jeff's game, the CRPG that he made in the 19. What was the name of your game from the 80s, Jeff, that you made?
The Seventh Link.
The Seventh Link. So yeah, games like that. You know, I had total fun playing them even when there was no explanation. Now I definitely looked at the sort of the modern CRPG development challenge. That part of it was, well, you know, let's see if we can take things a bit further, and explaining dungeons was part of that. For me, I wanted to have some kind of explanation, and the approach that I took in Nox Chaos was um, basically to just have an underworld and make it really, really, really big. And and I played a little game with the players where um, I fooled them, or I think so. Others can tell me otherwise. People can tell me otherwise. Into thinking that Nox Archaeist had traditional shaft style, you know, hole in the ground dungeons like the Ultimate games did. Or well, all of them in on the Apple II up through Ultima 5, they were all shaft style dungeons. And Ultima 5 added in an underworld at the very bottom. You get down to level 8 of any dungeon, any shaft dungeon, you exit down into this underworld. But the shaft dungeons are still there. Nox Archaeus gives you that illusion where you're entering these caves, and it's like, okay, well, that feels like you're entering a dungeon, and it feels kind of, you know, constrained initially as far as the space you're in, kind of shafty. But what's really going on is you're just in this really big underworld, and it happens to be that, you know, there are some tighter constrained spaces to the caverns, and then sometimes things kind of open up, and next thing you know, you're wandering from sort of one region to another, and you're exiting back onto the surface in a completely different place than where you entered in, sometimes on a different island, you know, where it's a way to like get across large bodies of water alternative to ships. And I've watched players post about that, where the moment the light bulb turns on and they realize what's happening, you know, when they come up to the surface on a completely different island, and then figure out how to get back to where they were, and they're like, whoa. So that was the fun I had with it in Noxercast, is to essentially cast the concept of a dungeon as just a really big underworld, and then I wrote some lore explanation around that for like, well, why is the underworld there? Well, that's, or more importantly, why is there stuff in it? You know, because underworld fundamentally is easily explainable, just as well. It's an elaborate, you know, system of caves and, you know, all of that from like a geological standpoint. But why is there stuff in it? Well, I wrote some backstory around that, as far as, you know, back in the old days, you know, some uh, warring between races on the surface resulted in some of them going underground, and that evolved into these kind of monster races that, you know, in the present time of the game, and uh, you know, that was kind of the foundation of it. That justified like, well, what's going on with the orcs and the kobolds, and, you know, some things like that. And then of course throw in, you know, a crazy wizard over here, just because crazy wizard. And then you can do anything because crazy wizard. Throw in a dragon over there. You know, I gave him plenty of room. It wasn't 10 by 10. And you know, that was kind of how I approached it. And at the same time, I kind of took the opportunity. Something else I wanted to do was to try to explain a little bit more about like, well, why are the monsters, you know, evil or perceived as evil? Are they evil? And so I got into that a little bit as well, with this backstory of like, well, you know, how did the orcs and the kobolds end up down in the underworld? Well, it was all based on this falling out that happened on the surface all this time, you know, ago, and there's resentment, and you know, things evolved, and at this point, nobody really remembers what they were angry at the other, you know, people for, and so I tried to kind of delve into that, and even set up a situation where the player could broker peace between the kobold. I think it was the kobolds and um, the gnomes. I think Sorry, it's been a long time. But actually, in this case, it was tension between two races in the underworld. But the player could actually broker peace between them, and that there's of course limits to what I could do in 8-bit with this. But that was kind of the capstone of it, is to to set the stage of, well, there's a reason that they're down there. There's a reason that there's tension, and it's not that anybody's necessarily evil, but it's just the way things evolve, and then give the player an opportunity to do something positive about it. And that's just a small little kind of corner of Noxer Chaos. It's certainly not the main event or anything like that. But it's something I was really glad I had the opportunity to do, and it very much built off of the foundation of providing that explanation, if you will, for the quote unquote dungeons. So those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I was going to say that I always thought you just had an underworld because Ultima 5 had an underworld.
Oh no, there was more than that. Yeah, I mean, certainly I was aware of Ultima 5's underworld, and yeah, I didn't want to just do the same thing as Ultima 5, where in that case it was 8 shaft dungeons leading down to a underworld. So what I did was different, where the map is the overworld map is 256 by 256, just the 5, because that's going to be like the 8-bit limit, or the logical 8-bit limit. But then there's 5 underworld levels, each one with a 256 by 256 map, which is a sharp contrast to Ultima 5, where it was 8 shaft dungeons that connected a 256 by 256 underworld to a 256 by 256 overworld. And so that was my inspiration from Ultima 5, with a pivot towards, well, let's do something that's not quite like that, but similar, and then layer in the dungeon explanation and all this other stuff on top.
Yep, yeah. The funny thing is that early D&D didn't have a concept of the Underdark, as they called it. There's like the original Dungeoneer's survival guide talks about vast underground areas and the idea of having layers and stuff. But then I think around mid 80s they finally introduced the actual Underdark. And so that's the one thing. I didn't have that in ROA because I just didn't want an underworld, but it might be something I do in a sequel. A fun little thing. Here's something I don't know if you guys recognize. This is brown graph paper, which I don't know about you guys. When I was in school, this is what they gave us to do all of our homework on for trigonometry, geometry, and whatnot. And it also doubled as cheap, easy graph paper to grab to draw your dungeon maps on for your Dungeons and Dragons game. Somewhere my brother has a cache of them, and he hasn't found it yet.
Mine were blue and yellow. I never had brown.
I bet you impressed your teachers that you were doing so much diligence in your homework that you just kept running out of the graph paper.
Yeah, exactly. But I did notice the story with your underworld, and I did appreciate that. I thought that's cool. This is an actual good explanation for why the evil monsters are not don't like you. Makes me wonder if if Dragonsmere is going to revisit that.
Yeah, we will see. And we will also find out if Dragonsmere is a place or a bagel topping.
That's true.
I mean,
Wait, I'm pretty sure it's a place. You mentioned it in the first
smear, where the smear is nice and lean. But no, it actually is a place that was some breadcrumbs dropped in the original Noxer Chaos game, which is set in the Isles of Windmar, which are part of the world of Valley, and there were references to other regions. There was a reference to Helm. I should remember this. It's my game. Helm's Reach, I believe, and then also to Dragonsmere as being 2 other regions. And so yeah, we'll see. I would say that it is safe to say that there will be an underworld, because that we were looking at a segment of it essentially that was under the Isles of Windmar, but it really goes under the whole of Valley, at least in various places, and I certainly think that it is underneath the Dragonsmere region, that there are parts of it. What'll be going on down there, that will, I won't spoil anything about that, but it should be interesting.
All right. Well, I think we can wrap up with Greg.
Well, I'll keep it short because we don't have any dungeons. uh, as Megan says, in the game that we're about to release, it's all on the open seas and islands. There are no dungeons even on the islands. The only game in the whole repertoire of stuff that we have that even mimics a dungeon is when you enter the castle of undead. I believe you do go into a dungeon. It doesn't describe it as such, but you're going through a maze, which the walls are all stone on all sides. So I don't know what Mark's idea there was, but it kind of feels dungeonish. Yeah, I don't, in terms of how dungeons work and why they work, the only dungeons I remember from my days of Dungeons and Dragons. But that's just how the game started. You're in an open field and you find a door. Oh, now you're in a dungeon. Now you're fighting monsters. That's about all I can remember. And I'm, like I said, not much of a gamer myself. I'm more of a logic and puzzle gamer. It's probably why I fell in love with Undead. Ever since my high school days, I don't think I've indulged. I even got my son hooked on Dungeons and Dragons for a short time. And he and I had some fun with it, but I haven't played it in ages, so.
All right. Yeah. No, there's a lot of fun. You know what a roguelike is, right?
Yes.
Yes. So there's a lot of good roguelikes now that'll generate really fun procedurally generated dungeons that are quite, that are quite entertaining, actually.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned roguelike, I've always been in search of, since I played Rogue on, God, what was it? The original 8088 computer I had in high school, or in college. I'm sorry. And then I fell in love with this one that was on the Newton PDA, because it was really well written, and obviously got harder as you went through them all and all such. But yes, I know exactly what you're referring to, and I actually found a couple for the Apple II GS and a couple other platforms, and I've enjoyed playing those as well.
Yeah. I mean, those basically just they're the epitome of the dungeon experience, and they're kind of, you can call a roguelike a CRPG, I think, because it has all of the same mechanical limitations. That you have stats, you have an inventory, you have stuff, you level up, you're exploring a dungeon. It's just codified to just that one experience. So all right, well, I think that is a wrap. I think we've been going here for a couple hours. I think we can call it good.
2.5.
Yeah, we should just tell everybody where they can find our stuff. Like for Noxer Chaos, for example, if you want to check out the game and the box set, the Feelies, go to 6502workshop.com. You can also find us on Patreon for anyone who's interested in supporting development of Noxer Chaos 2, beyond, of course, buying the existing games, which is absolutely appreciated. You can find us there at patreon.6502workshop.com. Thank you so much for everyone who is a Patreon supporter. And where can we find your stuff, Greg?
8bitshack.net or 8bitshack.org. Either one, go to the exact same website. And then on that website is where we will announce the Kickstarter for Skull Island. But it is all the same website where you can download all the free and pay for the paid stuff. So yeah, you can explore everything out there, including become a 8-Bit Shack member, where you can then access all the various technical articles and documentation on all the previous work that Mark has put together, or concepts and such. But yeah, that's where you'll find us, is 8bitshack.net or 8bitshack.org.
Awesome. How about you, John? Where can they find your stuff?
So you can find me at distantsystems.com, or you can search Mythfarer on Steam. MYTHFARER. Hard to say, fun to play.
And you can find my company, Chaotic Software, at chaotic.adamantier.com. You can also find my games. You can just search for Realms of Antiquity on Good Old Games, Steam, or itch.io. And also my good friend Arcade Shopper, who helped fund the Kickstarter, also has it available for download from his website.
I was wondering if you knew Gregory McGill.
Oh yeah, no, he's been a big help. He was the one who founded my helped found the Kickstarter for a second printing of my collector's edition.
Yeah, he's the one who's gotten me back to my childhood days of my TI-99 4A. So
Nice.
very good. I'm glad it's a small world out there, but I love running into more people that we know out there. So
Yeah, and Gregory McGill will be at the Portland Retro Game Expo next month. So
fantastic.
Oh, and that reminds me, Adam, thank you. Nexercast is also available on Steam, Good Old Games, and itch.io as well.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate
I
it.
think we have hit the linoleum. So if anyone is still with us, please let us know in the comments. We really enjoyed that last time.
yes, thank you all.
All right. Cheers, everybody.
Take care,
Bye.
everybody. Goodbye.